cheers. Here's Siddle. Oh, that ball is close. He's given him. He's given him. Peter Siddle's got a hat-trick on his birthday.
Welcome back to the On the Ball podcast. This is episode 47. It's getting into that nervous stage where you don't want to schnick off before you're 50. You really want to get to that 50 mark. But how are we, boys? First 24 hours of stage 4 lockdown. This is coming out on Saturday. We're recording it on the Monday, so basically a week ahead. How are we, James, Curtis? We're joined by the NFL experts, as you guys all would know by now. Curtis, how are we?
Not bad, mate. Great, boys. How are you?
Good, mate. Yeah, I'm all right.
Pretty good.
Obviously, lockdown's not ideal, but
yeah. First day of uni as well for our uni. So
Indeed.
I won't lie. I haven't checked my email, so I could have had a class today.
I've checked mine, mate.
Nah, I saw that I had an email from each subject, and then I was just thinking, I'll look at it tonight, and then I'll plan out my week, because I was like, if there's something on the first day of the semester, it's not going to be important anyway. But yeah, so that's a pretty good attitude from me on the first day. So yeah, anyway, today we're discussing our top 15 running backs. So we did our top 12 quarterbacks 2 weeks ago. Then we did our quarterback roughies and stuff like that, and people who could be smokies in the draft. We did that in the last NFL fantasy episode. So now we're on to the running backs, arguably the most important position in fantasy. Usually the ones who are snapped up first in the draft, and we're going to be going through our top 15. So once again, we've all made a list of about 25, and then we've averaged it out to get our consensus top 15 selections. So without further ado, I think we should just get into it. So number 15, we have a new player to the league.
Who is it?
A rookie. Pilch is extremely high on this bloke, but me and Curtis, we're a bit more worried. So it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire of Kansas City Chiefs.
Interesting.
There's been a lot of drama in the last week in the NFL. A lot of people testing positive to COVID. A few players opting out, and Damian Williams is one of them, who was Kansas City's number one running back the last 2 or 3 years. So that's elevated Clyde Edwards-Helaire into the number one position, so it seems anyway. Pilch, you had him ranked seventh actually. So in your eyes, he's been snubbed at this position. So why did you rate him so highly?
Well, I actually had Clyde around 15 before the Damian Williams news, based on the fact that since Mahomes took over the Chiefs offense, their backfield averages 1.5 touchdowns per game. And, well, now that Williams is gone, you'd expect Clyde to take a huge bulk of snaps now. Before Williams was out, I was like, pretty risky, but now it's like guaranteed. He will absolutely ball out with touchdowns and obviously catches passes. So for me, if he can just have 200 snaps, 200 attempts, he's locked in as a top 10 running back. And we saw it with obviously Kareem Hunt 2 or 3 years ago, and I reckon Clyde's arguably a more talented running back than Hunt. So for me, he's going to be huge.
Curtis, you were the opposite end of the scale. You had him at 19th.
Yep.
Why weren't you too big on him?
I'm just wary about rookies, because last year I had a rookie coming into round 1 and I got bummed.
Wait, who was that?
Had Montgomery.
Oh, yeah.
And just did not go well at all. So
I feel like they were actually similar picks in the draft, but yeah.
And they're similar players as well. So I'm just very wary. But Pilch has got him higher than Fantasy Pros, which is pretty interesting as well. Fantasy Pros has him at 10. So interesting pick, Pilch. But he'll definitely get plenty of snaps. I'm just not sure whether he's going to be a top 10 running back, because especially in his first season, but also because they've obviously got Mahomes. So if they're going to come down to priority, it's going to be throwing the ball rather than running it.
Yeah. I won't lie. I'm not too I don't know how this is different, but for me on Fantasy Pros, it had him at 8th, so it actually agrees with Pilch, as opposed to you and
Really?
me, which
Wait,
is
you have
quite
him at,
significant.
did Fantasy Pros have him at 8 on your, mine says 10.
Oh, really?
So where
I don't
mine
know.
said 12.
Yeah, he's gone. I know he's gone up because if you look at the ADP, he's around like 13 or 14
Oh yeah,
or
that's what
maybe
I was looking
12.
at.
Where if
Yeah,
you look
mine
at
says
like
he's gone up.
if you look at where the experts have ranked him, he's 8.
Oh,
So yeah, so they actually agree with Pilch, but for me, Curtis has basically said it all. Just the unknown nature of a rookie, basically. If there's a way, so if you are in like a 6-man league and there's a way that you can get him on your bench, even if you have to pick him up a bit earlier as your third running back, like he would be the ideal bench option
yeah,
because
great call.
he has, like as Pilch has predicted him to come 7th, he like legit has upside to be a top 5 running back, but then he's also a risky one to go in as your starter. The things that just freak me out a bit are just the way the Kansas City Chiefs go about running backs anyway. Like they are big fans of the committee running backs. I think Andy Reid's always kind of been big on it. The lads sharing it around. But as you were saying, Pilch, Clyde's probably one of the more talented running backs that Kansas have had. Well, seemingly had. We're not too sure how he's going to go. So yeah, I see why you rate him highly, but for me, just a bit scared of the old rookie tag. There's quite a few rookies actually. I was a bit freaked out by you guys had. We might talk about this next week in another episode, but you guys both had Jonathan Taylor in your top 22s.
Yep.
I didn't have him in my top 25, and then just the rookies. Pilch, you had Cam Akers at 25th. I'm just not that big on the rookies. I'd rather just
Interesting.
play it safe, to be honest, especially with the starters. Maybe the
Yeah,
bench, different option, but yeah. So I had him at 16th. But yeah, as you said, Pilch is going to be scoring a lot of touchdowns in the number 1 offense in the league. And yeah, it's probably not really a way he's going to be bad. It's just a matter of whether he's going to be elite or good. But yeah, I actually respect the pod call there, Pilch. It's a risky one, but I
yeah.
respect it. So that moves us into our number 14, and it's Christopher Carson of the Seattle Seahawks. Pilch, your man from last year. Pilch, you had him rated at number 18, so we'll get to you in a second, but I actually was carrying the flag for the great man at number 10.
Ooh,
Yeah, I don't
juicy.
know. I just big fan. Nah, last year he had the 13th highest average. His offense has arguably improved with like DK Metcalf improving and stuff like that. So they will hopefully be able to move the ball even easier this year. The O-line hasn't really changed at all. In terms of his competition, they've added Carlos Hyde, but I don't think that's going to take too many snaps away from him. I think that's more just injury cover because they got a bit spooked last year when Carson and Rashad Penny both got injured. So yeah, if he finished number 13th last year, in the second half of last year he came 18th. In 2018 he came 16th. So he's been pretty consistent around that 15 mark. So maybe there's not much to suggest that he's going to improve to number 10 like I've suggested. But yeah, I think it's pretty fair to have him at where we've got him in at number 14. Fantasy Pros have him in at 17. So he's actually the only bloke outside he's the only bloke who wouldn't make their top 15, if you know what I mean. Everyone else we've got here is rated inside their top 15. Pilch, yeah, you have him down at number 18. You do love the great man. Why? Well, to be honest, you're not even that against him, but why have you got him lower than me and Curtis?
Yeah, well, I do. I am a fan of Carson. I actually thought I was high on him, but I just don't really see where the improvement is going to come from. Like, he's on a good offense that likes to run the ball. We've seen that in previous years, but obviously they signed Hyde, so his snap count will most likely be less. And yeah, I just think all the guys I have above him, I just can't really see him scoring more points than them, if I'm honest.
Yeah, Curtis, you were not too dissimilar to me. You had him at 13.
Yeah.
What was your logic behind that pick?
Mine was literally just pretty much the same as Pilch, just going through seeing whether I reckon he would score more than any of them. He's pretty consistent. Like he's not a massive scorer, but he's always gonna get your points on the board. A bit like Mac last year, but he just scored a bit more than Mac. What worried me a bit was the fumbles last year, to be honest. He did fumble quite a bit last year, especially in the first half of the season, which kind of did ruin his fantasy scores early on. So if maybe that's where his improvement might come, to what Pilch was talking about before, whether he's going to improve or not. So if he's going to improve, maybe it might just be the fact that he won't fumble this year or fumble as much. So we might not see the kind of reduction in points that happen from a fumble.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very sound logic from both of you there. Also has to be noted that he has the 30th toughest fixtures in the league, which probably doesn't help him, but Seattle are a quality team, so even against the harder opposition, they're still likely to put up, 20 plus points. But yeah, exactly. I liked what you said there about that Marlon Mack point. Very similar to that kind of running back, just consistent week in, week out. Just has a bit more touchdown scoring potential than those guys, as Seattle are a pretty good team. So yeah, that moves us into our number 13. Another one who we ranged quite a bit, varied quite a bit. We had Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders. Pilch, you had him at 11. Curtis, you had him at 9. And I actually had him at number 20.
Really?
So Curtis, I reckon you head us off. Fantasy Pros had him at 13. But you head us off, Curtis, and explain why you've got him at number 9, mate.
He was a rookie last year, I believe. Yep. He performed. He actually performed pretty well last year, to be honest. I think you might have even had him, Cork, if I remember correctly.
Incorrect, but I think Campbell had him. I think
one of the Corks had him, but yeah, and he actually performed pretty well last year, and I can't see where there isn't going to be any further improvement this year. I mean, they've added a wide receiver, which in a way just adds another weapon to the offense. So another thing that the opposition has to be wary of. So it might even just open up those gaps a bit more for him, and allow him to push through. I mean, that's pretty technical and pretty it's not necessarily an exact reason why he's going to be better, but it just might be a slight reason. But I generally just don't see how he can be worse than last year, and I think there's plenty of improvement for him relative to last year, and I thought last year was quite impressive. So I think he's going to be definitely a top 15 running back in terms of fantasy, and certainly, in my opinion, a top 10 fantasy running back, because I think he's got plenty of potential to score points. And I think he's a huge offensive weapon for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah. Very fair points. Pilch, anything to add on that one or not?
Yeah,
really?
Well, obviously, Josh Jacobs is obviously an absolute weapon of a running back. He's not on the greatest offense, but for me, if you're picking him up in the draft, you're going to be pretty happy. You're going to get at least 300 attempts out of him. He'll rush for minimum 1,200 yards. Obviously, last year he wasn't really involved in the passing at all, and he's not a natural pass-catching running back, but that's not something that's going to decrease this year. If anything, it'll go up slightly. So I like Curtis, I think the only way is up for Josh Jacobs.
Yeah. Very, very sound points, as always. To be honest, 20 is not even too much of a change from where he finished last year, so I can understand why you guys have him to be improving just through natural progression in his second year. In the second half of last year, he finished 21st in terms of average, so in terms of that was a bit weird that he decreased from the first half to the second half of the year, but that's probably down to just the whole offense kind of halting a little bit.
Yeah.
I know Derek Carr got worse as the season went on.
I think Jacobs may have played a couple of games with a bit of an injury from memory.
Bit of a niggle.
Yeah.
As we love to say. Fair enough. That wouldn't surprise me because that's a pretty strange backward step. But fair enough. 20 is probably a bit harsh, but I just have to admit, from about 15 to 25, wasn't too much. Actually, no, 25 wasn't too hard, but like from about 12 to 20, it was pretty tough. Like comparing him with your blokes like Fournette and like, I don't know, Lev Bell, James Conner, like that was all pretty weird. So yeah, got him in at 20. But yeah, one of our more varied selections. That moves up. Fantasy Pros has him at number 13 as well. So pretty much we had him at 13. So we are basically the experts as always. Then next we're rolling with Miles Sanders. Probably a pod pick if you were looking at it like 8 months ago, but nowadays everyone's pretty up and about on Miles Sanders. Fantasy Pros have him at number 10. We have him at number 12 as a collective. He's actually tied 11th, but we'll chuck him in at 12th because he does like the person above him has a higher rating from someone. So Curtis, actually, you had him at number 16, mate. So a little bit low on him, but we all were pretty similar. But how come you were lower on him than, most people?
I just don't see as much upside for him as everyone that I've got in front of him. I mean, I've got James Conner above him and Melvin Gordon, but I mean, I think he just sits in around that kind of area. Like he sits in around that kind of Ingram, Sanders, Conner, Gordon, where in a way he's an unknown. Like we're not really sure whether he's going to be, absolutely racking up the points, or he's just going to be that kind of consistent running back who's just going to put up, your kind of, I don't know, 18, 20 kind of points every single week. So I don't know. I just wasn't extremely high on him. To be honest, I'm not as high on Philly as everyone else is as well. So I think that just might be one of my personal reasons why I'm not as high on Miles Sanders, is just because I'm not overall high on the overall team. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I guess you two have him a lot higher in your rankings. So I'll leave that up to you boys to explain why.
Yeah, Pilch, you've got him in at 10th, mate.
Indeed.
How come?
Well, the thing about it is, in the second half of last year, when he was fit, he was injured at the very end, but he low-key balled out, and that was because he was unreal in the passing game and running game. There's obviously concerns about the fact that their head coach does like a committee backfield, but the truth is he's easily their best running back. So if he can't be sharing that around, like he's got to take the bulk of the snaps because he's a weapon. And yeah, obviously this is for PPR. Not sure, I forgot if we mentioned that at the start.
No, we did not mention that actually.
Yep. So we do a PPR league. So especially in PPR, I think Sanders should be ranked higher because he does love to catch a few balls as well.
Actually, I forgot to mention it at the very start, but I'll pause on this Miles Sanders discussion. We are going to be doing an On the Ball podcast fantasy football league. I keep forgetting to mention it at the start of the episode because that's obviously when more people are listening, but I'll have to put something up on the Instagram in a couple weeks or even this week just to see what the interest is like. Because I think that would be pretty fun, and we could do the draft as an episode, and then we can review how the league's going week by week. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that quickly.
No shit blokes though.
Oh well, we did play with Lachlan and Campbell last year, so we're kind of used to it. But
and Curtis,
mate, he wasn't the one who named his team Hitler's Oven, but that's right. Miles Sanders, I had him at number 11. Yeah, pretty much just exactly what you said, Pilch. He is now the RB1, where last year Howard actually had more rush attempts than him per game. He was 14th in the second half of last year on average. So for me, it's just a natural progression for him to go up. That was actually his rookie year last year. So as we were saying earlier with Jacobs, he just should improve in the fact that it's his second year. His O-line and offense have arguably taken, well, not his offense actually, but I think his O-line's taken a step back. I think they were kind of at their peak in 2018. They've slowly gotten a little bit worse, but his offense should improve this year, although they lost Jordan Howard. Boston Scott, who is his backup, is actually pretty handy. And then they were very injury riddled last year. Wentz fought through niggles. Who was it? Oh yeah, Jeffrey was out for like 60% of the season. Deshaun Jackson was out for most of it, so I think that will open up the field for Sanders and help him a lot. So that's why I've got him in it there. So that the man he's tied with at number 11, Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. We were once again pretty mixed on this bloke. I had him at 9. Curtis had him at 12. Pilch had him at 16. So Pilch, why were you not too hot on him in at 16?
Well, just simply because last season he scored about 19 touchdowns, and there's just absolutely zero chance that he can reproduce that. Like, that would just be miracle type stuff there. So he's definitely going to come down. He was in like the top 5 based on average, so he will have to fall a long way to fall all the way to 16. But I can see it happening, and I can see a lot of other guys moving up. I think there's a lot of good running backs this year, and yeah, he doesn't get as many snaps as well as these other blokes.
Yeah.
So
I understand your logic of like these people can't keep replicating this stuff, but I feel like you can't apply it too often because like
no, but like
what if they're just a beast?
This
Like
was
Christian McCaffrey and
astronomical.
Lamar Jackson. Like there's actually nothing suggesting that they can't just replicate.
Jones had more touchdowns than McCaffrey. That's how ridiculous
but
it was.
Green Bay's like 3 times better than Carolina. But no, I get the logic, but I feel like sometimes you have to apply it with a grain of salt because, like, especially not so much in this case. I think it's a very fair point in this case, but in terms of like CMC and Lamar Jackson, it's like, well, they are only young, so there's not really anything suggesting it. But Kurt, you had him in at 12, so pretty much spot on. As a consensus, we had him at 11. Fantasy Pros had him at 14. So why are you putting him in that place in your list?
Similar to Pilch, but just not as extreme. I think he's obviously going to drop, but I reckon he might rack up more yards, less touchdowns this year, which is a bit weird, but I can just see him getting. He will still have. I don't know. I just feel like last year there was a few games where he really didn't perform, and then there was some that he racked them up, and I feel like even though he might overall descend in terms of his overall season output, in terms of like touchdowns, I feel like he might actually rack up more overall yards and have an overall like more consistent season. So he'll definitely like decline in his overall fantasy output, but I feel like he might just be like that kind of, I don't know. I'm gonna compare him to Marlon Mack again, but he's got more spice to him than Marlon Mack, obviously. But yeah, I feel like he could have a consistent season, but it's just not going to be like racking up huge touchdowns and just pumping your fantasy. So I feel like he's sitting around that kind of 12 spot.
Yeah, another thing is if you're getting to like end of the first round, start of the second, which is about where we have him, I would not want him as my running back 1 just because he's completely reliant on touchdowns to get his points. So I'd rather draft a bloke who's got that floor.
Yeah,
in his
no, fair enough. I think I did notice that actually in your ratings, Pilch, that you don't like people who rely on the touchdowns, as you snubbed a bloke completely in your whole 26. But no, we will mention that next week.
Whoa,
fair enough.
Now I'm scared I forgot him.
Well, I think you might have, to be honest. But
I want to know who it is now.
I don't even know if he would have made the top 15, even if you hadn't forgotten. But it doesn't matter. I'll just say it. We'll discuss once I say it. We can't discuss it. All right, we'll discuss it next. So it's Mark Ingram.
That was I left him out on purpose there.
Didn't have him in your top 26.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But yeah, no, Aaron Jones, I understand your logic. I just don't think he's going to fall that far, to be honest. I don't think Green Bay as an offense is going to take a step, if at all, like backwards. If they are going to go backwards, it's only going to be a little bit. And the thing is, there's not really like they've brought in any other big offensive weapons who are going to take away those touchdowns. So it's either Jones scores a lot of touchdowns again, or they just don't score any at all, because I'm not really sure where else they're coming from. They did draft a running back, I think in the second round, maybe in the third round, AJ Dillon or something is his name. So he might take a couple snaps from him. I don't think anything too ridiculous though. But yeah, as you guys have mentioned, what were you going to say, Pilch?
Comes down to similar with Clyde, a bit of draft tactics. You're not necessarily going to. It kind of depends who you've drafted before him. Like if you've drafted a Zeke, then you'd look at getting a bloke who's a bit more up and down, the upside, like Jones or Clyde. But so it depends.
And as we joke about, but it is true, Aaron Rodgers doesn't really know anyone on his offense apart from Adams and Jones. So
I don't think he knows Jones.
Well, he celebrated with him 19 times last year, so you'd hope so. But he is one of Rodgers' favorite targets. And as we said the other month, I think in one of the predictions episodes, that Rodgers was down last year, and we expect him to be better. It's their second year under Matt LaFleur, so their attack should improve. And so that's why we've got him at 11. I've got him at number 9. So number 10, this is another one that I'm carrying the average. It's Kenyan Drake of the Arizona Cardinals. Curtis, you had him at 18. Pilch, you had him at 12. I had him at number 6. Fantasy Pros had him at number 9. Fantasy Pros had him at number 9. This is the one that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, this is the one we deviated on the second most. I actually worked out the standard deviation for that statement.
Jeez. Uni coming in handy.
Mark Ingram. Well, it's just Excel. You just press equal standard deviation. But Mark Ingram actually did have the most standard deviation thanks to Pilch's snuffing. But Kenyan Drake, I've got him at number 10. Russell Coit, why do you not back the big fella in? And you've got him at number 18.
To be honest, in my opinion, myth.
Not wrong.
Pretty
not
decent
wrong.
reason. He is a myth.
So I don't know.
Is actually what you're gonna say.
He's just he's just not on my radar.
I won't lie. The thing, I'm not really well equipped on my knowledge with Kenyan Drake this year, but
That's what I was gonna say.
I have seen. Obviously, we saw him ball out when he moved to the Cardinals, so obviously he's got upside. But yeah.
All right, I'll read a little stat to you to maybe educate you lads. In the second half of the season, so from week 9 to week 17, he was the third highest ranked running back. And that's when he moved from the Dolphins to the Cardinals. So that's pretty much all you need to know, really, to understand my logic. He went from, in terms of when he went from Miami to Arizona, he went from an offense ranked 27th out of 32 to 9th out of 32. His O-line has improved a little bit. He's got a fairly easy run at the start of the season in terms of his first 6 rounds. He's got one of the easier fixtures. And so I just like him pretty much. Not much else to explain other than that number 3 ranked position in that second half of last season. Not really too sure. Obviously, I don't think he's going to come number 3 again, hence why I don't have him there. But I'm just not really too sure why he takes too many steps back from that position. It's not like they've signed a running back at all. If anything, David Johnson's left. He wasn't getting many touches at all anyway, but that's another guy gone out of the backfield rotation. I don't really know why. Maybe they throw a bit more because they've got DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't really think that's the greatest argument. I just back him in, to be honest.
Drake definitely has a lot of upside, as we saw. As you said, he balled out running back 3, but it's a smaller sample size, and I think there's still a bit of uncertainty. Like I wouldn't go and draft him at the 106 when there's blokes like, I'm assuming
you need to explain what the 106 is.
Oh, people that play fantasy will know what the 106 is, but the sixth pick of the draft.
Yeah.
When you've got, like, I'm guessing you've got him ahead of. Well, we'll get to these other blokes in a second.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's similar to Clyde, but for me, I just back him in a bit more. I guess probably similar logic for me to put him there, for you to put Clyde at number 7. Probably someone, now that I know you guys aren't too hot on him, I wouldn't actually mind trying to sneak him on as an RB3 on the bench with someone with that upside. But
there was one thing I did actually remember considering when I was actually going through I was thinking he's playing for Arizona, and I don't know what their overall schedule's like, but they have to go up against a San Fran defense twice, who I presume are going to be pretty rough on him and pretty he's not going to cop the biggest amount of points when he's playing San Fran. He's going to have to come up against the Seahawks twice, and he's going to have to come up against the Rams twice. So I know that's just it's a tough little schedule when you look at it that way. So it might not necessarily help him out.
Yeah, I back that. In terms of fixtures for the whole season, he's actually got the 19th hardest. So
it's not
19th easiest. So it's actually not that bad, but
it's not bad at all.
That is a fair point. They are 6 tough matchups. So yeah, that's basically all you need to know for why I've got him at 6 is that he was number 3 in the second half of last year. The rest really speaks for itself. We've talked about in the last few episodes that we think Arizona are going to be very high scoring this year. And then that usually benefits a running back, as we just discussed with Aaron Jones. So that moves us into our number 9. It's Austin Echola. Pilch, you had him at number 13. I had him at 12. Coit, you had him at 8. Fantasy Pros had him at 11. Curtis, why are you big on this man?
Because he was big last year. Actually huge last year.
Massive.
Yeah, and I don't know, I feel like they haven't really gone backwards as a team. They could only really go forwards because they got rid of Rivers, who ended up being dog shit. So they relied pretty much essentially on Eckler to kind of just drive their offense. So now that, who did they get? Did they get Tyrod?
Taylor,
yeah.
And
Tyrod's not even
Herbert.
Yeah. And Herbert's not bad either. Herbert's actually he can sling it. But Tyrod's not even bad. Tyrod can run it, and he's not even a bad QB. So I reckon I don't see how he goes backwards, because now, even if he doesn't have the load that he did last year, there's so many weapons there that it kind of opens the field up for him a bit. So I don't know. I feel like he's got lots of potential to rack up points again this year.
Yeah. He last year, he was also affected by Big Melvin. I don't know if you mentioned that.
Yeah.
He was actually in the back end, yeah.
Yeah. And in the second half of last year, when he had Melvin averaging more rush attempts than him, he was still the 8th ranked running back. So if he adds Melvin's rushing attempts to his, quota, then all of a sudden he gets off the field. Can't be laughing.
How can you say me get off it when you've just chucked those on?
Yeah, just shut up, mate. Yeah, so Echola, I won't lie, I'm actually pumped on Echola now. I'm tempted to lift him up just because another reason. So obviously I factored in that they've lost Melvin, but now that they have a less established quarterback, they're less likely to throw it as much. More likely to have a running and passing balanced attack, which would obviously only benefit Echola. So yeah, big on Echola. It's his first year in the NFL as a RB1, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Pilch, you had him at the lowest position. You had him at 13th. Anything that you don't like about Echola's case?
Well, there is one thing actually. Obviously, if you look at his scoring last season and then look at the fact that they've lost Melvin Gordon, you'd think he'd be like a top 5 running back. But I actually think we're going to see a completely different Austin Eckler this year. This season, he's going to have to be the workhorse running back. And he got the bulk of his points from Phil Rivers throwing it to him. Like, probably more than half of his points were just from that alone, as well as touchdowns. And now that the reason Phil Rivers does that is because he's never run in his life. All he does is check it down to the running back. Now that they have Tyrod Taylor, who's mobile, likes to scramble, rather than chucking it down to Eckler, he'll be scrambling himself in most cases. So I think his passing workload's going to come right down. But then on the flip side, his rushing workload's going to drive up because they lost Gordon. So
that's fine.
Couple things to weigh up there. But yeah.
He's a tough one to predict, actually.
Yeah.
I was going to
Otherwise,
say,
He could
be
ball
anywhere
out
from
again,
fifth.
but
He could be anywhere from 5th to 20.
I was going to say, if I was drafting right now, I don't think I'd want him as my running back one. By no
Yeah.
means.
No,
Like
I don't
he'd be an elite. If you had him, as your running back 2, you'd be pretty chuffed. Like it'd be like, hopefully you're whipping out massive numbers from him. But because of his variability and I guess his uncertainty, because he did have a pretty good year last year. He had a really good year last year, but like before that, he was a pretty big unknown. So I think he's still an unknown because we don't know whether that season was just a one-off or whether he can just keep pumping that out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, that's for sure. But yeah, like the ideal situation with Echola would be like you bring him in RB2 and then you have someone like a Clyde on your bench. So you've got like 2 guys who have big upside and then you can kind of just stick with whoever does the best as your RB2 for the rest of the season. But obviously that'll be hard to manifest. So now number 8 is Nick Chubb, another bloke who we're very varied on. This is kind of the last guy we vary a lot on, and then it kind of gets, into the more common selections. But Nick Chubb, Curtis, you had him at number 5. Pilch, you had him at number 9, and I had him all the way down at number 15. So Fantasy Pros had him at 12. Curtis, why are you so big on Nick Chubb?
Had him at the start of the first, I'd say 3 quarters of last year. In fact, I might have kept him the whole way. I can't remember exactly.
I
believe
reckon
he
you
did.
did. I don't know though,
But
but
he
I think you did.
he definitely performed for me for the first half. And yeah, I just love him. I just reckon he's a good hard running back. I feel like they might have I think they have a new coach, so that will be good. Who was it? Kitchens last year.
Yeah.
That's all I gotta say. Dog shit. So they might have I feel like there's upside for him. Kareem will probably take some snaps, but I don't know. He's going to be definitely their running back 1, and Mayfield has a better season. So even if Mayfield has a better season, I know I've said this before, and I don't know if you guys agree, but I feel like if a QB is performing well, it opens up space for a running back, and the running back ends up performing well as well. And I don't know, you probably disagree because you would say like if there's a QB performing well, they're just going to throw it and not give it to the running back. But I feel like even if they do throw it, I mean, if you give it to the running back, you're opening more space because the opposition defense is now starting to prioritize and thinking about what throwing. So like you see your safeties kind of move around a bit more and there's a bit more space. So I feel like there's lots of upside for Chubb this year.
No, 100% what you're saying is true. Like most of the top teams, as long as they don't have 3 or 4 running backs, like your Baltimore's and stuff, most of the time their running back's going to finish high, as we were saying for Aaron Jones, just because of touchdown volume and obviously the range of options that the quarterback can throw to is going to open up the box, as they call it, for the running back. The reason I'm not high on Nick Chubb, we'll get to you, Pilch, in a second, but I just don't back him because in the second half of last year, when Kareem Hunt came back from suspension, he was the 23rd ranked quarterback. And I'm not too sure why anything will change from the second half of last year. It's not like he was playing injured or anything. Their O-line has improved. They got in, as we mentioned in the last podcast with Baker, they got in Jack Conklin from Tennessee and a first-round O-lineman, which will only help him. But for me, 23 to 5 is a pretty large jump. So I reckon he is going to improve on that 23. Just also, as we've mentioned, for quite a few of these guys, he's still only young, so natural progression. I think it's his 3rd year in the comp. But yeah, for me, 23 to the top 10 would be a big jump. So I reckon 15 is where I see him finishing. Pilch, you've got him in at 9, so just cracking that top 10. What are your thoughts on the Chubbster?
Yeah, so I think I'm slightly higher than consensus ADPs on Chubb. He is an absolute weapon. I was watching some YouTube analysis and they were talking about him having...
You're going to say highlights.
Well, that as well, mate. But He was the number one running back in yards gained, like by yourself, like irrelevant of the offensive line, which like pretty much you can arguably say is the best running back in the league based off that. But yeah, as we talked about in the last episode, Browns have improved their offense as a whole, including the offensive line, which will drive Chubb's touchdowns up. He was lacking in that area a bit last year. And obviously, so yeah, I think he'll be really good, but the lack of receiving, like he cops nothing through the air, so that's going to prevent him from, I reckon, being in the top 5. But I think he'll be definitely top 3, if not pushing for top of rushing yards this season.
Yeah. No, very fair. If he can, as you just said, like with Derrick Henry, we saw that you don't have to necessarily catch the ball a lot, as Kareem's going to get most of the running back receptions. But if he can add touchdowns to his, 100 yards a game or whatever, all of a sudden he's a very consistently reliable running back for your fantasy team. That moves us into number 7. This is probably our final guy that we're pretty variant on, and then from the rest of it, it's just same position except for Pilch hates one of the top men. We've got Joe Mixon. He is sitting at number 7 on the Fantasy Pros as well. He's number 7, so we're spot on there, lads. Pilch, you are carrying this average, mate, in at number 5. So why have you got him so high at number 5?
Well, the thing about Mixon is, like Chubb, he's an absolute weapon and just goes completely under the radar because of how shit his offensive line is. The Bengals had the 31st run block unit, which I believe is worse than... Do you know who was 32nd by any chance?
Yeah, keep talking. I'll tell you. Oh wait, Miami.
Yeah. So we saw Lev Bell get shafted by his offensive line, but the Bengals line was even worse than that. And they have added a center and a tackle in the off-season, so that should improve. He's also only 24, so natural progression there. We know he's good through the air. He should catch some passes. And bringing in Joe Burrow, they won't want him copying hits in his first year. So I'm sure he'll be dishing it off to our man Joey Mixon most of the season. There is a worry about game script because the Bengals will likely be down 20-0 at halftime, which
great point, mate.
Which does mean he may cop a few less snaps based off that, but I think he's a lock for over 300 rushing attempts, and like Nick Chubb, will be right up there for rushing yards, but has a bit more to offer in the passing game than Chubby Cock.
Curtis, why are you not? Wait, where did you have Mixon?
11.
Mixon the Dixon 11. Oh, so you're not that.
I'm not off
him.
him.
But
I'm not off him.
Why aren't you as high as
on
Pilch?
him? Shit.
But you're on the Chubby Cock. But yeah, that's right.
Just shit team. Like
not wrong.
Mate, you sound emotional. You sound emotional describing how bad they are.
I mean,
you were Bengals fan.
Bad. Nah, I just feel bad for them. Like, anyway.
How many games did they win? Like 2 or 3? I think it was 3. Anyway, continue.
So I feel like shit team. So he's not going to be at his full potential to what he could literally be. But yeah, I feel like he'll rack up yards, maybe some touchdowns, if he's lucky, because as I said, Bengals are a shit team. And I don't know. Just on the game script thing, there's also another point that he's not going to get as much time on the pitch as he would if he was on a good team as well. Because let's be honest, most of the time they're going to be off. Their offense is going to be off the pitch. Just watching their defense get absolutely bummed. So yeah, I don't know. He's obviously a huge talent and he deserves to be racking up way more points, but he's just in a shit team.
Yeah, no, very sound points. Yeah, Joe Mixon, where have I got him? I've got him in at the old number 8. Pretty fair points from both of you. Just like a mix of your reasoning, really. He was the sixth, I think. Yeah, sixth best RB in the second half of last year. So that's basically enough for me to chuck him in my top 10. He was number 9 as well in 2018. So it shows that it wasn't just a fluke couple games. As we said, the O-line is a bit of an issue, but hopefully that improves. I also think he's going to be really good early in the season. They don't have the toughest fixtures early, and I think in Joe Burrow's first few games, I don't think he's going to be having 40 passing attempts, stuff like that. I think they're going to be running it a lot more, and then maybe as Burrow gets a little bit more comfortable, he will throw it a bit more. Or even if he is going to throw it, he probably will lower his eyes and look for Joe Mixon as opposed to throwing it to John Ross, like 70-yard passes and stuff. So I think he'll come out the gates hot. But yeah, no, I've got him in at number 8. But I do like Joe Mixon.
I forgot a key stat that I brought in.
Hit me, son. Hit me.
He was number 1 in the NFL for evaded tackles last season. So look out for Joey Mixon this season, boys. And he's obviously got zero competition in that backfield.
Giovanni Bernard has been playing second fiddle for 3 years now, so no danger in him overtaking his snap counts and stuff like that. And yeah, I think the offense will improve overall. So hopefully a few more points means a few more touchdowns for Joey Mix. That moves us into number 6. I won't lie. I believe you, obviously. But that Chubb stat's a bit confusing. How do you know which yards he made by himself and they're not down to the O-line?
There might be a bit of judgment in that.
Yeah, obviously I backed them over my opinions because I don't know as much as they would, but interesting stat. That moves us into the number 6 position. We've got the big Dalvin Cook. Was he on your team, Pilch, last year?
I drafted him, shipped him off to Curtis after a few games and regretted it ever since. Got him back right at the end, just in time for him to break his shoulder.
Yeah, nice. So we've got him in at number 6. Pilch, you've got him in that spot 6. Curtis and me have got him in at 7. We're actually a bit lower on him than Fantasy Pros. Fantasy Pros have him in at number 5. Curtis, why have you? We've all we don't really have a pro or a con against him as we're all pretty similar. But Curtis, what are your thoughts on the Dalvinator?
Yeah, you're not wrong. There's no real pro or con against him personally. The only issue I've got is that I just don't see their offense performing as well as it did before, and thus him not getting as much pitch time and therefore not as many yards. So and potentially touchdowns. So yeah, I feel like he's still an elite running back, and you'd be happy to have him in your team for sure. But yeah, I'm just not as on his offense as I was last year, and so I think he might just have less output because of that.
Yeah, 100% agree with that one. His offense, based on preseason rankings, has dropped from 5th to 17th, pretty much just down to Stephon Diggs.
That's outrageous.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they've lost a few O-linemen as well. I don't know. Maybe they're less hot on Kirk Cousins nowadays. He's also pretty injury prone as well. I can't remember which year it was. It was either 2017 or 18. One of them, he only played 5 games. And he got injured in the back end of last year. Also, Madison, his backup, showed a lot in the games he played. So potentially a few more snaps for Madison, which would obviously hurt Cook. But overall, Cook was the RB2 of last year in terms of average. So pretty hard to have him too low, really. We can try and make up as many negatives about him, but it's pretty hard to paint a false narrative around him. He's just a jet. And I guess you could argue the Stephon Diggs thing might help him. They might have more rushing attempts. They have the 4th easiest fixture as well for running backs, which is pretty ideal.
Yeah, that's big.
Pilch, any other points you want to?
Yeah, well, I think he's in an elite offense and he's an elite player. It's important to mention the holdout business that's going on with Dalvin Cook. If we assume that it's not an issue and he's playing, everything's fine, then I actually have him at my RB4. But if we were to do a draft right now, knowing that there's some risk, I'll take...
You would draft him at number 7, even though he's not agreed to play yet.
would you? So if we did a draft right now, would you take him at 7?
No.
Hell no.
If he was holding out, I would
no, but
drop
we don't
drop him down to like 20.
We know the chances of him holding out are like probably 10%.
I don't even know.
I
if
know.
I'd risk
I
it.
don't even think.
Well,
that
actually, no. I take that back. I just would take him as my RB3. But I would not take him as a starter. No way.
Oh well, he'll still go in the top 6 or 7 picks, but
to be honest, I think I did that with Melvin last year, so I can't really talk.
Yeah,
imagine Pilch. Imagine you draft him at like 4 or 6 or wherever you draft him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't play the entire season.
Yeah, like you're gonna have to use like a first round pick on this guy.
Exactly.
And he might not actually play the first like month.
Well, then why do you boys have him at 6 then?
Oh, I just didn't even factor that in.
Okay.
I'm
Nor
just
did I.
assuming
I'm
it
on
gets
the
sold
presumption
before the start
that-
of the season.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on the presumption they're all playing, except
Has to be
we
said
obviously know
though,
Williams.
has Mixon decided what he's doing yet either?
No,
I don't know.
Neither has he or Kamara.
We'll have to watch out.
Cook's
We've also got to check NFL every day because, like every day, there's a few more guys added to the COVID list, and we're not really too sure what that means for them. I know the Josh Jacobs backup, he got added to that. I think a Tampa Bay running back got added to that as well. So we'll just have to keep.
Are they allowed to play once they test negative, or what's the go there?
Yeah, I actually don't know. I'd assume they just have 2 weeks off, but I guess 2 weeks out of training camp is pretty full on.
This season is gonna be an absolute shit show.
I won't lie. I'm gonna be surprised if they go through the whole season. Have you seen the baseball?
No.
There's 4 teams out. Like there's 4 teams whose games can't go ahead right now. One team, they had 17 players test positive. Then they'd already played 1 match, so their whole team had to get like tested and had to sit out for 2 weeks. Then the other day, this other team, unrelated, they had like 6 tests positive. They'd already played a team, so now like there's 4 teams wiped out of the comp.
Do you reckon they do what the AFL is doing and just create a massive bubble?
Yeah, but I think it's too late to do that. I think, like you saw how long it took the NBA to do it. Like they legit had to set it up for like 2 months, so they could try it. But I think it's a bit harder with NFL than it is.
Yeah, because a way bigger roster.
Yeah, and like way bigger fields and stuff. Where like in Disneyland they have like, or wherever it's being held, they have like 3 basketball courts there, so it's actually okay. Where there's like not too many places with like 3 or 4 NFL fields, and also there's way more people to house in terms of NFL. Like each team has like 50 players as opposed to 15. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would not be surprised if it doesn't go ahead, but I don't think the deep south of America would take to that too kindly. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I know Gardner Minshew tested positive today. So every day another domino falls, and we're just gonna have to keep an eye on that one. But we're still gonna act like it's going ahead. That moves us into our top 5. At number 5, we've got Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. I've got him at number 5. Pilch has him at number 4. Curtis has him at number 6. So once again, very similar. Fantasy Pros have him at number 4. Pilch, why have you got him in your top 4?
Just based on the fact that he's a god. 2 years ago, he was the running back 3 behind McCaffrey and Barkley. He's on one of the best offenses in the comp. Last season, his touchdown numbers surprisingly weren't up to scratch. Hard to see.
That is weird.
Yeah,
actually.
It's hard to see that being low again this season. And like assuming he's had a couple injury scares in the past, but assuming he's fit, he'll be a weapon. But I will say, if we do assume that Cook is completely fine with his holdout business, I'm taking Cook ahead of Kamara.
Interesting. Curtis, what are your thoughts on Alvin?
Oh, he's an elite running back. Yeah, just an elite running back, and I think, he's just going to do what he does as he always does. Just whip up yards, whip up touchdowns, and he'll be a RB1 no matter where you take him.
And
yeah, probably one of the more safe picks.
Yeah, obviously has probably the most passing upside as well.
Yeah, 100%. Probably the best, arguably one of the best. Oh, they're not the best, but probably the third best offense in the league behind Baltimore and Kansas. It has to be said, we'll talk about this maybe next week, but Latavius Murray, I don't know what he's doing. He can go get a starting gig in most teams, I reckon.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why he's resigned to being a running backup to Alvin Kamara, but fair enough.
The thing is, he'll get some all right snaps, Murray. Like Kamara won't get as many snaps as these other elite blokes, but he's way more efficient.
Yeah.
One thing that is concerning about Kamara is the injuries, though, especially last year. That was red lights when I saw that last year. I was like, don't know if I would take him this year because of that. Well, actually, I would take him for sure, but like, I know it's just red bell. Like, you know, when the bells are ringing, mate, you're like, shit, that could be, whatever. Red flags, mate. It's a worry. It's a certain worry, I reckon.
It's a tough one with the injuries, though, because you can look at it two ways. You can be like, oh, shite, they're error-prone. Or you could be like, well, they're going to have 2 injuries in their career. They've used one up already, so they're probably not due for the other one in a while. So it's
which
a weird
category do you reckon he's in?
I've got no idea. It's, as Pilch said, it's 100% luck. But also, it probably depends on the nature of the injuries. Like, I know hamstrings, once you do them, and like dislocated shoulders, you're more likely to do them again. But I can't say I know too much about his injury history. So, yeah, that's our first member of the top 5, just an all-round superstar and one of the best offenses. So, can't really see him slipping down. Like, he's probably one of the safest picks going around, I think. I don't think he can be in the top 3. Don't think he can be outside the top 8. I think he's firmly stuck in that slot in between. Number 4, we've got Derrick Henry. Me and Curtis have him at number 3. Pilch, you have him at number 8. Fantasy Pros have him at number 6. Pilch, why are you not a big fan of Henry? Well, why do you think he's going to decrease, basically?
Well, just the fact that it's a PPR league. Obviously, his influence in the passing game is next to 0. But then again, he was the best running back in the second half of last year. He racked up yards. He looked like he was playing against school kids in that second half of the season, like towards the playoff end. It was stupid. But they have lost their best tackle, and apparently he plays on the side that Henry likes to run to, which is the right side, I believe. And he's a weapon of an offensive tackle, so that's a big out for Henry. And I do think his O-line produced a lot of his yards for him. So I think he'll definitely decrease. But eight seems pretty stiff, but I just think the other blokes will be better.
Yeah, fair enough. Curtis? Is Curtis still with us?
I feel like, I don't know why, but obviously he won the Heisman at college, and he obviously performed well last year. So I don't know. I think he's arguably a more consistent running back than you could say about anyone else, purely because of his size. So you know he's going to be able to like break tackles, and he's obviously quick off the mark. So I feel like the variability in Henry is less than anyone else. So I don't feel like he's going to drop as much as Pilch says. And also he can actually catch. Like if you watch his tapes from Alabama.
You got to send it, mate. You've got to send it.
You can't say it right, can you?
No.
Yeah, if you actually watch his tapes, you can actually catch. So if they throw it to him, there's a genuine chance that he could add that to his repertoire next year. So we'll have to see. But I think he's definitely in your top 4 running backs.
Yeah, no, very fair. Yeah, pretty much same reasoning as you, Kurt. In the second half of last year, he was the RB2. In the whole season, he was the RB4. Probably the only concern about him is that he's never done it in the past. So in 2017, he was 48th. 2018, he was 22nd. So you could probably argue as a flash in the pan, but I don't really see a world where he's not one of the best rushers, which will probably just in terms of that, we'll probably put him in like the top 8, and then stuff like touchdowns and catches will probably decide how well he actually goes. Now to our top 3. Number 3, we've got Zeke. Ezekiel Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys. I've got him at number 2. Pilch, you've got him at 3. Kurt's got him at 4. Fantasy Pros have him at number 3. Relax, mate. Just one position off where you had
the
him.
implication is so spicy.
Last year, he was the 5th ranked running back and 4th in the second half of last year. In 2018, he was also the 6th. So he showed he is like a perennial beast. In 2017, he was also 3rd. So
what was he
he's
last
been
year?
consistent. He was 5th.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think Dallas played up to their potential last year, especially later on. Well, just the whole year, really. They weren't that good, where I think everyone's expecting them to improve a lot this year, especially on his side of the ball, so in attack. They're coming into this season with the 3rd ranked offense. Their O-line is also one of the greatest in the comp, 3rd ranked O-line. So, yeah, there's not too much to hate about Zeke. I just don't really see a world where he decreases on last year's. I don't think he played to his top ability last year, and he, was RB 5th, so I don't really see why it's that saucy of a pick. Like, yeah, fair enough. You could have him at 3, could have him at 4, but I think it's play on for any of those reasons. Curtis, why have you got him in at 4?
I just feel like those above him are going to perform better. And I don't know, probably just got a little grudge against him because when I had him last year, he didn't perform as well as I was expecting, to be honest. Because I don't know, when I picked him up, I was like, oh, RB, he's going to be in the top 3 for sure. And then his start of the season was pretty average, so relative to what I would have expected. So yeah, I don't know. But that's like, there's no way he would be outside top 5, and the offense improves compared to last year for sure. So you'd think that, as you were saying, it opens up a bit more for him.
Yeah, 100%.
And better coach.
Yeah, that's very true.
Big one.
As well.
That's a huge one, actually. Their coach was dog shit.
Pilch, what was the little snigger about there, mate? Why do you think it's so interesting that I've got him at number 2?
No, it's not. It's more so the deeper implication, which will.
Well, you can talk about it. Yeah, you can explain.
But firstly, with Zeke, he's the textbook definition of what you want as your running back 1. You can literally pencil him in for 18 points each week because he's getting 100 yards. He's more involved in the passing game than your Derrick Henrys and your Nick Chubbs. So that's why I think he'll edge them out in that category. And yeah, he'll be right up there for rushing. So, and I froth him. Watch his highlights every night. Some good material for those playing at home if you want to get on that.
Normally I'd say that's a joke, but I wouldn't even put it past you. You are a weird dude. So why do you think it's strange that I've got him above Saquon?
Did you say you had Henry at 3 or 4?
Yeah, Henry at 3, Barkley at 4.
Yeah, no, just
Barkley at 4.
Just a spicy one, mate.
That is
realistically
spicy.
Though, it actually doesn't matter where you have your top 4 running backs because it's like it's just your first pick.
It's your first pick.
I guess if you get the first pick or the second pick, it matters. But like, if you pick 4, you're just gonna pick whatever.
Well, actually, I don't know. Would you go if you had Lamar in the mix? Would you go Lamar above?
I was thinking that. How high do you take Lamar this year? We might maybe chat about it in a future
effectively
pod,
a running back.
So hard.
Well, it depends.
He's effectively a running back who can throw touchdowns.
It depends.
Well, I don't rate this whole attitude of
quarterback or 2 quarterback league.
But I don't get that attitude because he was so much better. He was 4 points on average better than the QB2 of last year. So even if it is only 1 QB, or whether it's 2 QB, but whatever, like proportionately, he's so much better than the other quarterbacks. Like, doesn't that make you want to take him the first round?
I think if I had first pick.
Like, I'll be honest, I'm not too good with draft strategy, but yeah.
If I had first pick, there's a genuine chance I go Lamar above everyone.
Yeah, it's like I understand why running backs are taken early, but it's like, to me, it just depends on what they are relative to the rest. Like, I think I took Travis Kelce in the second round or something, because relative to the other tight ends, there's only 2 or 3 that are like decent. So if you're getting the 4th
Yeah,
tight
true.
end, all of a sudden you're at a huge
His
point.
tight end
It's
fucked
a
me
damn-
over.
I agree
last
with
year.
that tight end call, but the difference, like the quarterback 8 is still a beast, whereas the tight end 8 is dog shit.
But he's like 6 points below Lamar. So
Not in a normal
relative
year,
to Lamar, is he actually good though?
Not in a normal year, like Lamar won't be that far out. I'll guarantee you he won't be that far ahead this year. Put $50 on it.
Yeah, no, but
Well, I'm not
Pilch, the
taking that
difference is though
stand,
is the max your tight end's going to score is what, like 20 something points. Lamar
Yeah.
could whip you 40 something points
Yeah,
if he
but
wants.
so can Matt Stafford, mate, in a given week.
Yeah, but who's going to do it more often?
Lamar.
Yeah,
But no,
Stafford's going to do it.
here's-
Stafford, what? How many times did Lamar
Here's
do it last
what
year?
I'm saying, mate. If you're taking Lamar with your first pick, when the thing comes back round to you, you're copping Fournette as your running back 1, where everyone else is rolling with Chubb, Henry.
Yeah, but I don't get why that's such an issue.
Yeah,
Because
and then
Fournette's beast.
Fournette's so far below. By the way, I was surprised Fournette didn't cop an appearance on the.
So was I.
He was actually first man out, so he was the
Where did he
emergency
have?
reserve.
Oh, can I ask where you had him, Cork?
Well, I had him at 18, but we'll chat about it next week.
Cork was lowest.
That whole.
Ah,
I was higher than Cork.
Yeah, I was.
I was the highest on him.
Yeah, so we need to finish this chat about the top 2.
Anyways,
Come on.
Okay,
Saquon. Saquonji, what? Yeah. So, what do you think is spicy about me having Saquonji at number 4, mate?
Well, if you
We don't even have to talk about number 1, just quietly.
2018, Saquonji put up 24 points per game with the shittest O-line in the competition. When he finally shook his ankle injury at the end of last season, I'm pretty sure I had to cop versing Cork that week. I'm pretty sure Saquon scored 49 points on me. So knocked me out of... But yeah, I'm pretty sure he chucked up 30 plus in like the last 3 weeks of the season. So he's like Zeke, but with a shit ton more upside because he'll catch 10 balls as well as running 100 yards. He's literally their entire offense. The only worry is
it's New York versus Dallas, mate. It's New York versus Dallas.
Yeah, the only worry is the O-line.
One team's going to average 40 points a game. One team's going to
I just have to
20s.
say this. I think New York's offense is genuinely one of the most spicy offenses in the NFL at the moment.
We talk about this every week.
It should be better, but it's not going to be. It's not going to be good.
It's so spicy. Like there's so much upside to their offense. It's not even funny. Think about it.
I actually think it suits Saquon more though if Daniel Jones does bad.
Think about where we chucked Jones for our QBs.
Yeah,
it's spicy.
Not in the top 12.
Yeah, but
it is very spicy. It's the 7th rated offense coming into this season. So
really
7th. Shit. Yeah. There you go.
And I reckon Saquon's only better than he was in previous years. Better offensive line, better QB. I reckon as a core in terms of their wide receivers, better than when they had Odell because they were so reliant on Odell. Now they can switch it up a bit more and they kind of do it as a core. So I think the Saquon has a big year. Thoughts?
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, Pilch obviously agrees, as he's in number 2. I obviously agree because he's in my top 5. But I back that. Also, I think in their red zone, I think they're more likely to run it in than pass it in. Whereas Dallas, obviously Zeke's going to run it in a lot, but they wouldn't be afraid to hit up their plethora of wide receivers. That also applies to Derrick Henry as well. Probably all going to be barnstorming through for touchdowns. So that just leaves us to the final man, the undisputed number 1 pick in every draft across the world this year. I think if any league doesn't take him at number 1, the league should be kicked off the server. It's just pretty rude. Christian McCaffrey of the Carolina Panthers. Anything we need to say? Averaged 29.5 last year, which was almost 9 higher than second. Wait, what? That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. I'll be taking him with pick 1. Thanks, boys. Surely, because I'm host of the podcast, I get pick one.
Yeah, you can have pick one. My take on this is that I actually want
the
pick two.
snake system. You don't want pick one, do you?
Yeah, but
I want
but
pick
you
one
get
because
McCaffrey.
last year I had the last pick in the first round, and I'm telling you, it hurt the ball sack.
How, mate? You got lucky because I took James Conner, so you got Zeke.
I liked my position last year. I think I had pick 3.
Yeah,
It
yours
was
was
nice,
good.
just the middle
Yours
of
was
each
just good
round.
ham.
You got pick 4, Corker,
Oh, really?
because Campbell took Mahomes at pick 2.
Yeah.
And then
You're still in the middle of each round, though, Cork. You're still in the middle of each round.
Yeah.
I rate the middle, but
at least pick one. You don't have to think. It's nice. It's just a straight up given. So yeah, CMC. Not as I keep saying, not much to say really. Their offense is probably going to improve this year, which will not only help him. And the crazy thing about CMC, I think he's only 23 or 24.
Yeah.
So
Smart fella as well.
we say that like he's not going to be able to average that ever again, but like there's not really much suggesting why he can't.
his body won't be able to cop that many hits for another season.
Disagree. His dad proved that wrong.
Mate,
His dad
no
was
one
a
can take
running
that
back.
many hits, mate.
We don't know though. He could just be a freak, and he could just do
Mate,
it for like 4 seasons.
drug
It's in his genetics, mate. His dad was an absolute bull of a running back as well, and took hits all the time.
His body is just the weirdest thing because he's like not even tall, but he's like just such a tank.
Yeah,
he's a nugget,
like,
mate.
Obviously, Saquon is under that. Well, most of these guys are under that umbrella as well. But McCaffrey's like biceps and quads. It's like pretty weird.
McCaffrey and Saquon are neck level in that category. Like both of them, when you see both of them, you're like, fuck, like they're legit nuggets.
Yeah. So there's not even much to talk about the great man. He in 2017, first year in the league, he was Carolina's RB2, came 13th overall in the whole league. That's how much of a boost he is. 2018 came 3rd. 2019 came 1st by 9 points, as I mentioned. And it wasn't like just a couple of fluke games early on. In the second half of last year, he was also number 1.
And he's a genius.
I think their offense will improve. Their O-line has improved a tiny bit. And yeah, I just don't really see anything to chat badly about the great man. Consensus number 1 pick by all 3 of us and Fantasy Pros. So yeah, anything else you want to touch on about this top 15?
Was tempted by putting Saquon at 1. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I was just about to say I've got Saquon and McCaffrey in the same tier, and then a drop off to number 3. So I actually,
boys.
I actually wouldn't mind.
What did Saquon finish in his first year? What did Saquon come in his first year on fantasy?
First,
second.
Well, yeah, first on total points, second on average. Yeah.
So he's just shown up McCaffrey.
Yeah, but they averaged the exact same thing, 24.1. And then last year,
one was in his first year.
Do you want to know the margin last year, mate?
Yeah. By the way, let me just say something.
Saquon didn't have an opportunity.
Let me just say something.
Was just injured.
Who averaged first that season? Todd Gurley. Why wasn't he on the list? You boys. You boys dogged him.
Because he's injured. Like he's just injured all the time.
Curtis dogged him. I didn't dog him.
22nd.
Last season on the Rams, he had the 3rd highest snap count in the league.
We'll save this, lads. We'll save this. Is exactly what I'm talking about next.
You can't be injury prone, injury risk, and playing 3rd highest snaps.
Pilch. How many times did he let down? How many times did he let down young Cork?
Oh, every week, mate, because he had a stinker of a season. But
that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say.
Block.
Wait, Curtis. He averaged 2.5 more than Saquon and Christian McCaffrey in 2018. So
that's 2018. Yeah, and then
you just brought it up as an example for Saquon over CMC. So,
but the difference is that Todd Gurley has a history of being injured ever since the end of 2018. And has not been able to.
That's a big history, mate.
Well, the thing is though, it's proved to be a chronic injury that he has not been able to recover from.
Wait, Corker, where do you have Gurley?
17. But we'll chat about this next week.
All
This
I
is
have
like,
to say is, all I have to say,
Same
why
as
did the
Derrick.
Rams?
That was like the
Why
same as
did the
Derrick.
Rams get rid of him? The Rams just got rid of him. That just proves to me that there's serious injury issues associated with him.
Nah,
like, why do you know
he
that?
won't be elite, but
Because why would you just get rid of him?
Because he's probably asking for like silly coin.
yeah, I reckon it was more.
He's
to do
on
with
silly
him
coin
being-
anyway. He
being
wouldn't be
bad.
asking for more. He was already on it.
Well, we'll chat about this next week. We'll chat about
Sorry,
everyone who got missed out on this top 15. Quite a few snubbings actually. I think we all had about 2 or 3 in our top 15 who didn't make the consensus list. So we'll go through them. We'll also maybe go through a few rookies who could be bolters, a few, RB2s in their respective sides that could come out of nowhere. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I won't lie, I have to do some thinking. I'm not too sure what day the next fantasy episode is going to come out because it's my 50th episode and this isn't the 50th. We're not doing fantasy for the 50th episode. So I don't know whether to bring fantasy forward or push it back or bring the 50th special episode forward or back. So I don't know. Got some things to work out there, but this is coming out on the Saturday. So enjoy the rest of your weekend. Or if you're listening to it a couple of days late, enjoy the rest of your week. Stay strong in lockdown. I know it's not ideal, but if you're feeling bad, feeling lonely, chat to a mate as we've done today. Even if you're lipping each other off about a fantasy sport, that's all good. But thanks for joining me, lads.
Thanks, Cork. Appreciate it, mate.
Cheers, boys.
And thanks for listening. See ya.
That was beast. I enjoyed that.
When it got saucy at the end because he started ripping